Yes, guys, and welcome to another episode of ThreeTings. Um, I hope you've been receiving the series well. Today, I wanted to speak on just my thoughts centered around sort of black or Afro sexual selection. Just something that's been on my mind now and again. The process, just thinking about it. And because I look throughout even my own family, and I seem to think like the elder members were stronger than what the youngers were. And I feel like that's in today as well. I feel like I look at these older Jamaican and like sort of even West African men, like, and they look still Adonis, like they still look fit, like riding their bikes around here in this area. And I can tell when they was younger, they would have been a lot more fuller in body and just hench. Do you know what I mean? Is what we call it on the street. And I think, why is that? And I'm not letting my eyes play games with me. I'm not being gaslighted on it. And just like a personal story here to start off, yeah. Like, my grandfather was about 55 years older than me. But I remember, like, I was about maybe 19, 20, 21. We was just wrestling. Yeah. And this man was still physically stronger than me. So he would have probably been in his 70s. And he's like virtually like a little bit stockier than me, not much difference in size. So I think it's fair to say he was a stronger human being than what I was. You know, my uncle did say he was very strong. He had big muscles, right, on the videos, you see. So, like, fair to say, like, he was physically stronger than myself as a human being. And I remember, like, a few weeks before, like, his death, I shook his hand, and he was able to, like, still squeeze my hand, and he was still sort of had more grip strength than what I've ever had, you know. So that's a good sort of barometer, especially if man's like in his last days, you know. But then I potentially am probably physically stronger than my son, you know, and probably could do this similar or the same, you know. So you're talking about an 80-year gap between, say, my lower generation to my highest generation that I've seen, yeah, right? And there's an 80-year gap, but one is much stronger, yeah. Could it be the food? Could it be the diet? Could it be the surroundings, the bringing up? Yeah, it could be, yeah. But I think it could be this as well, you know. Let me just read an extract to you so you can get where I'm going with this, right? So, there was a man called Pata Seca in Brazil. That has been coming up on my YouTube. I've been getting fed a little bit of information about him, but I'm just going to read you an extract, right? A breeding slave who had more than 200 children. He was picked by his slave master because he was strong, tall, powerful, and had excellent genetic traits. But that didn't stop him from fighting for his freedom, fighting for what he thought was right. He led slave revolts, rebelled against plantation owners, and did his best to educate some of his children on how to survive. This is the story of a legendary man who had seen it all. For 350 years, slavery was the core of Brazil's economy. About 40% of the 40 million enslaved Africans brought to the New Americas were taken to Brazil. Yeah, for centuries, every African who came to Brazil became a slave, yeah? It goes on to say he was born in 1828. He was forced to father about 249 children. Could have been a lot more. This made him a direct ancestor to 30% of the population of Santa Eudoxia, Sao Carlos in Brazil. Now, with that there, this is what I think happened, yeah? Up until the abolishing of slavery, I think that personally, yeah, like since that time we've had more choice in sexual selection. Like, you know, like men, they tend to like, say, feminine females. And so what a man looks for in a woman is different to what a woman looks for, yeah? So a man's looking for like feminine features and whatever else, right? But then a female's probably looking for a strong, athletic man, yeah? But what I feel the slave master was doing, because they were breeding us, right? Just like dogs, yeah? You want to get the best attributes out of the dog, yeah? So I believe they were putting the strongest and fittest black women with the strongest and fittest African men, yeah? That's what I think they were doing, and that's what was creating such a strong race of people, and also the harsh conditions, right? Coupled with that, yeah? So I'll give you like a real life sort of rendition that's sort of coursing through my veins. So let's say Sha'Carri Richardson, Merlin Ottey, you know, Shelley Ann Fraser Price, whatever, yeah? Let's just say her equivalent was on a slave ship. They docked in Brazil, wherever it was, yeah, in the Americas, yeah? And as soon as they got off, they were feisty, they fought back, they went on the run, they starved them, they set a trap, and they caught her. She fought for her life, they beat her down, and they raped her viciously. Yeah, but she fought for her life like a man, yeah? So the slave master either culled her, but then he probably put her to work, you know, and made sure she breeded. And he would have said, do you know what, that one there, that Sha'Carri, she's a feisty one. My God, we couldn't catch her in the field. Yeah, do you remember that other slave that we couldn't catch in the field? We've got him on ball and chain now. Yeah, or we had to take one of his legs off or whatever. Do you remember that one, yeah? Let's put him with her. Yeah. Do you remember that one that could lift, I don't know, 50 sugar canes and every other man is only lifting 10 or whatever sticks, yeah, right? Let's put him with her. And let's make him mate with her. Yeah? And that's how selection went, I believe. I believe they made the strong mate with the strong, male and female. Yeah? So that's what I believe made such a strong race of people that endured the rigours of slavery. I believe it was the breeding program. Inadvertently, the slave masters were breeding a stronger race of people than what we currently are doing potentially in this current time. And that's since the abolition of slavery, yeah? Because they would have forced the strong to mate with the strong, yeah? When, let me give you an example, right? Today now, I'm not going to say which athlete because there's quite a few, but there's an athlete I would look at, a black athlete. He's a specimen, you know, he's a world-class athlete. But I look at some of the females that I've seen him have as a playboy, and there's a lot of them, right? And I was looking at him with one of his females on a show, sort of showing off and this and that. And I was thinking, like, imagine, like, if he was having children with, like, an Olympic sprinter or someone that was extremely strong and athletic, what the enhancement could be. Just like, do you know what I mean? Just thinking, you know? And I'm not saying anything bad, but I looked at the female that he was with, and I looked at her from not a beauty perspective, I looked at her from a genetic sort of physical specimen perspective. You know, people don't like to look at these things. So yes, she was very voluptuous. She had, you know, a nice, probably Brazilian booty or whatever, paid for. You know, she looked very, very fit, very beautiful, you know. But I was thinking, can she run 100 meters, like, very fast or quick? I was thinking probably not. Probably goes to the gym, but is she an athlete? And I could tell, like, I thought to myself, nah, this female is not an athlete, you know. And he's like a prime example, like, of what's different now to what it was then. Yeah, he's picking his partner purely on his sexual likings, yeah, or his physical likings. Yeah, he hasn't had to go through a process where he's been forced to mate with the strongest of the strong. He's made himself, or he's mated with who he finds attractive, which is different to what nature maybe building the strong chooses. Because also as well, you got to remember, they wouldn't want to lose people to illness and things like this, so they'd go for the strong pretty much all the time. They would get the first pick, if you know what I mean, or the first go, whatever you want to call it. And that's what I believe has made, or could have potentially made, the American or the black slave in America become maybe not as strong as what they were 200-300 years ago, I believe. Because they've been allowed, since the abolition, you could say, slowly but surely, yeah, and with all the media as well, yeah, towards feminism and whatever else, and Eurocentricity and whatever you may want to call it, to water down what they used to go for, which was maybe a big, strong, maybe even overweight black woman. And that's slowly being pulled away and pulled out of society, and you don't realise that you're in that mechanism of hypnotism. Yeah, you, from the minute you come out your womb, you're programmed to potentially like certain features and certain things about women that you don't even realise, and until you do realise, it's over, because it's already pre-programmed and it's a part of you and you can't change it, But yeah, no, this is just my sort of speaking on this. I'm not sure if there's anything that could be done about it, but sometimes I'm just thinking, man, if someone's a top 5% athlete or whatever, can you imagine the possibilities, especially with the technology we've got right now? Yeah, could you imagine if that Olympic powerlifter, which they most probably do sometimes because of social life and whatever, procreates or mates with an Olympic sprinter or a top sort of boxer or tennis player, yeah, mates with, do you know what I mean? But they do these things. But within slavery, it was on an industrial scale, and that's why I believe the American footballers and all the athletes that they've got in America on scholarship, that's why I think they're so that's why I think there's so many of them, so many great athletes, because of that system. And it's fed through to today still, but I believe it's being watered down via the direction of going towards choosing a female over what you fancy or what you see or what you find as sexy, as opposed to what you find as physically strong. Because again, a man looks for something more feminine and a woman looks for something strong. So the women potentially aren't selecting incorrectly, yeah, but the men potentially are, just on an athletic standpoint, nothing else. I'm not saying anything else, but I could tell with this athlete I was looking at, vice versa, if that male was a female and he was a female, she would be unathletic as a man, yeah, and he would be probably obviously athletic as a female. So I know no, it's bad to say, but potentially he could produce offspring that could enhance physical capabilities, but it's taboo and it's not something you really say because it's love and emotion and all that sort of thing. But inadvertently, that is how the slave masters sort of, you might not want to say this, but they might have done us a little favour, and that's what gave us a lot of strength. That's what gave us a lot of strength, That's what gave us our athleticism. Because, like, you know, like those athletes they've got in America on scholarship, basketball and all that. Can you imagine, like, this is another video anyway, right? But there's so many sportsmen that have literally been abducted by the mainstream sports. Yeah, if they came out of the mainstream sports, can you imagine what can be done? The possibilities would be endless in other sports. Because no doubt it would rewrite the record books. You've got all-time greats that would be in other sports. Yeah. And they're all in the mainstream. They all get taken by the mainstream sports in whatever country they are by the time they're 5 or 6. And if they fall off, or maybe they've got a different lifestyle, but for the main, yeah, they're literally abducted and taken away when they would have been great in all the other sort of less mainstream sports, and yeah, if somehow, man, I want to speak about this in another video, but if somehow money could be filtered into sport, not just boxing, yeah, but across the board, whereby you've got people switching codes or people finding it fashionable to, like, do you know what, I don't want to be a footballer, I want to be a bobslayer, I want to be a skier, I want to be a this and that, and I'll get paid the same. You're talking about, like, the other sports, like, just literally the record books being rewritten, I believe. But this is another sort of conversation, and it's another deeper chat, I would say. Anyway, we'll leave it right there. I hope this message finds you well. And am I in that top 5%? No way. Too late for that. But anyway, I hope this message reaches you well. Yeah, take care. Deliver this message straight to your heart, because it's from mine. One. Bless.